Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, as we head ever closer to that precarious general election cycle looming this November, we see that the presumptive gutless opposition party, or GOP, nominee, the New York billionaire, real estate tycoon, businessman, and all-around vulgarian Donald J. Trump, also known as John Barron, and also known as John Miller, is starting to implode with respect to adhering to our fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear arms, as is safeguarded in the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. But it's not just the Don Trumpolini, the mafioso quafioso, that is starting to show signs of betrayal here. In fact, we don't really expect this to be considered a betrayal on his part, seeing as he has espoused nothing but Fabian Socialist progressive views for the vast majority of his adult life. Where the betrayal starts to come in is with those so-called conservatives who decided to throw their weight behind the vulgarian. And chief and foremost among these is Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions. You see, Jeff Sessions used to be considered a champion of the conservative cause. However, if you start to delve a little deeper into his voting record, he has been a bit of a détente member of the gutless opposition party, now facing this strange dichotomy with respect to our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. Jeff Sessions finds himself in an untenable situation. He has had to try and walk the line supporting Donald Trump's gun ban, which is the no buy, no fly, or we cry bill. Now, I know that we have mentioned this on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer, but it bears repeating again here. When we have said so many times, both Jeremy and I, that the fundamental and inalienable rights of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, are non-negotiable. Yet, Trump has said that everything's up for negotiations. We warned for the past 10.5 months that this would be the course of action that the New York vulgarian would take, and that it would start to unravel the conservative movement. That's what it comes down to, folks. He has been diametrically opposed to all that we hold near and dear in the conservative movement. And this, of course, again, explains why we created the constitutional compositionist movement. We have to be able to exert and wield influence over these nefarious forces. We have to be able to oppose them at any and every given and available opportunity. So Sessions is now having to support Donald J. Trump's gun ban. And there are even those who are saying that the National Rifle Association, or NRA, is supporting this as well. Folks, we have got to get away from this. It is not doing us any good. It is betraying our God-given rights. Remember that all those years ago, back at the foundation of our representative republic, George Mason, that most brilliant of founding fathers, when called upon to assist in the drafting of the state of Virginia's Declaration of Rights, he came to that immutable conclusion that the American people, in their capacity as popular sovereigns, are endowed by their creator, the God of nature, with certain fundamental and inalienable rights, and that no earthly authority can rightfully or justifiably take away, besmirch, encroach upon, or belittle these rights without due process under the law. Of course, the no buy, no fly, or we cry bill goes against all of that, because it's all done in secret. There is no due process. As I mentioned on the previous Solo Flight Special Edition, that Senator Joe Munchkin of West Virginia came out and said that the due process aspect is killing us. It shows that those forces, the gun grabbers, are diametrically opposed to the Constitution. Of course, that makes sense. But what needs to be said, and something that we have oft-times reiterated on past episodes here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is that if you speak against the clear and concise terms and language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, you are standing in stark opposition of the supreme law of the land. Pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, what is commonly known as the Supremacy Clause, the Constitution itself composes the supreme law of the land. This really isn't a difficult concept. I mean, maybe if your entire campaign was built on a Waffle House instead of a house of cards, it might be difficult for you to understand, but the only one who has that is Donald J. Trump. Now, of course, this wouldn't be an issue if the mafioso quafioso were not the presumptive nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. Yet here we are. We find ourselves in the untenable situation where he is, in fact, the presumptive nominee of our party, and we see that the sellout, Jeff Sessions, who is looking for all of the sessions he can find to grovel at the feet of the orange vulgarian, finds himself here, and he attempts to walk a tightrope in trying to make conservative principles and philosophies match Trump's wild pronouncements. We see in an article put forth by Red State that they say, in the latest example, Sessions tries to reconcile Trump's gun ban with the protections Americans are afforded under the 2nd, 5th, and 14th Amendments. Now, let me pause here for a moment and delve a little more deeply into that. As we all know, the Second Amendment speaks to the fundamental and inalienable God-given right of the popular sovereigns to keep and bear firearms. The Fifth Amendment has the Due Process Clause, as does the 14th Amendment. So due process is so important that it is included twice in the Constitution. First and foremost in the Fifth Amendment that was there early on, and the 14th is one of those post-Civil War amendments. Nevertheless, these amendments work in tandem, all designed to protect the fundamental and inalienable rights of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people of the United States of America. There's no way to sugarcoat this, or candy-coat this, or sweep it under the rug, unless, of course, you're a nefarious, frothing-at-the-mouth Fabian Socialist, much like the presumptive nominee of the GOP. And I know that this is going to get tired, or rather tiresome to keep speaking about. I know you are probably tired of hearing it, but we are certainly tired of speaking about it, but it is of the utmost importance. Because as my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, has so oft-times repeated, without our rights, we are left with nothing. Think about it, folks. What they are doing here is they are looking at the face of an Islamo-fascist attack against all Americans. Yes, he particularly targeted a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. But make no mistake about it, folks, this is an attack against the West. This is what the Islamo-fascist state of ISIS has always been about. And they are seeing this as a great victory. The best way that we can hand victory to them is to destroy and undermine our own sacred rights, philosophies, and ideals here in the West. And so we see that the cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism are striking at the heart of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, and that these nefarious forces are working in tandem and in collusion with one another to double down on their efforts to strip and deprive law-abiding citizens of their rights. They're punishing us for the actions of Islamo-fascists. And that's the thing. We see that they glorify the Islamo-fascists and they attack us. But back to Sessions. Sessions said in an interview with CNN Politics, a lot of people on the terror watch list shouldn't be on it. Yes, that's true. We know that the list may contain innocent Americans, he goes on to say, but we definitely want to prevent people on them from having guns. So we think they should be allowed to ask if they can get off the list if they shouldn't have been on them. Problem solved. Well, no, not really, Senator Sessions. The reason that the problem is not solved is there needs to be a notice and a hearing if you're going to put them on that list, and if their fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms is targeted. You see, that's the thing. It's not due process after the law, not due process beneath the law, due process under the law, meaning the law must provide it in order for it to be legitimate. This is a very slippery slope that we're approaching here, folks. They are trampling upon our fundamental and inalienable rights, and they're doing it with carte blanche. They're acting as though what they do has no wrong, that they can do no wrong, and that the Don Trumpolini understands best and what is best for the American people, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. Again, this is why we say that our fundamental and inalienable rights are not negotiable. This is the danger of trying to say that everything is up for negotiation. This is the danger of trying to hem our rights into a box, trying to create some sort of bright line rule that cannot be applied to the true rights of the popular sovereigns. Why is this so difficult to understand for the mafioso quafioso? Well, I think the reason that it's so difficult for him to comprehend this, and why his acolytes are having to scramble to try and create these intellectually disingenuous excuses in a form of apology for him, basically being apologists for the mafioso quafioso, is because for the vast majority of his adult life, and he is 70 years old now, folks, he has espoused Fabian Socialist progressive views. And we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been warning about that for quite some time now. It is our duty, our obligation, and above all our responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable rights. And the first step towards ever achieving that goal is to ensure that we all foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution, and thereby also our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. It may seem as though I am placing far too much emphasis on this issue, but no, there can be no too much emphasis. There can never be too much emphasis on our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. That is what our founding fathers expected us to be wholly wary with respect to the federal government, or any type of centralized authority for that matter. Recall that when we go back in time and look at the foundation of this country and that long, drawn-out, bloody affair known as the American War of Independence, we see that our founding fathers were locked in a life-and-death struggle against a centralized authority and power, that of the most well-organized and equipped and powerful military force known to man during the 18th century, the Empire of Great Britain. Despite all the odds which stood against them, they placed their life, property, wealth, health, and sacred honor on the line. And we see here that Jeff Sessions shows that he is a sellout, that he does not believe in sacred honor, that he does not believe in our fundamental and inalienable rights, that he will do anything to win. And that is wholly dissatisfactory. That is something that should make the stomachs of every red-blooded, hard-working, decent American citizen turn, because it shows that they will do anything to strip and deprive us of our rights to elicit power for themselves at our great expense. Folks, we tried to warn you that this was coming. We tried to warn the Lion Trumpidians that their fearless leader was not who he claimed to be, and we now see it unfurling before our very eyes exactly as we predicted it would. How could they refuse to listen to reality? Well, again, they were blinded by rage and fury. Look, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, understand the vast amounts of anger that have rippled in waves through the body politique of this once thriving, flourishing, and dare I say vibrant representative republic and community of popular sovereigns. We understand that the gutless opposition party, or GOP, has betrayed us at every given opportunity. But to claim that Donald J. Trump is some sort of an outsider, that he is not a part of the political elites, that he is not one of those who espouses Fabian Socialist views, is to close your eyes to facts and reality. It is to ignore who he has been for the vast majority of his adult life. Unless and until we can really come to terms with this, we are going to continue to see the political, moral, and actual decay of our representative republic. We are not going to be able to overcome these things unless we band together in solidarity and unity, standing shoulder to shoulder for our shared Constitution, which, as I previously mentioned, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, is the supreme law of the land, and for our fundamental and inalienable rights. This solidarity and unity must be based on the Constitution. In fact, going back to the inception of our nation some 235 years ago, that is the only thing that unifies us. That is what we are called to swear allegiance to, and it's the only thing that we are called to swear allegiance to. Yet this is something that the mafioso quafioso doesn't seem to understand, nor does he seem to care about it. Everything to him is about power, just like the political powers that be, those who currently wield the reins of political power in America. They view the American people as useful idiots, as pawns to use in their political game. But if we recall from Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, or is that The Art of the Steal, or even more apropos, The Art of the Squeal, we see that he said we don't need chess players anymore in the arena of foreign policy, or indeed in any form of deal-making and negotiations. So I guess what? We're now pawns on a checkerboard so that he can make up whatever rules that he wants to on the fly? That does not fly, because we here are a nation based on the natural law tenets. Our entire constitutionally endowed representative Republican form of government is rooted in the natural law. But of course, Donald J. Trump does not understand the natural law. Nor does he care about the natural law. He sees it as an obstacle, something to be overcome, to dupe the American people to gain limitless power. He sees what Barack Hussein Obama has transformed the highest office in the land into, something that it was never constitutionally designed to be, and he is basically just frothing at the mouth to have the opportunity to get that sort of power for himself, to amass that amount of power within his smally hands. It's the last thing that we should allow to happen in this country, just as allowing Hillary Rotten Clinton to gain control of the political reins of power here should be a last thing to happen too. But here we are, facing this untenable choice of two presumptive nominees for the mainstay political parties that have no allegiance to our supreme law. How can it be? How is it that we in the United States of America can choose these two disastrous choices for the highest office in the land? This does not reflect our values. It does not reflect who we are, both as a nation or as a people. And the more that we stop and think about it, the more that we see that these shallow, hollow, empty, meaningless platitudes have been used in such a way as to divide and conquer the American people. Again, this goes down the line of the factionalization that George Washington warned about in his farewell address. Why did we not heed his prophetic warnings? Why did we allow ourselves to be pitted against one another so that we're attempting to tear out each other's jugulars? It's a nefarious thing. It's something that's been happening in incremental fashion for the past 150 years. Remember that the Fabian Socialists, who trace their origins back to 19th century Great Britain, and who adopted the original iconography of a wolf in sheep's clothing, what Scripture described as Satan assuming the form as in order to infiltrate and pervert societies across the globe, that what they're trying to do is to do exactly what Satan did, to pervert society, to erase all that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. They don't care about all that we hold near and dear. In fact, truth be told, They loathe and despise all that we stand for, all that we represent. They know that their twisted machinations would never survive in a free marketplace of ideas. And they extend their hatred of the free market to free market capitalism. Look at free trade. Donald J. Trump has come out and repeatedly reiterated that he does not like free trade, that he wants to go back to a system of protectionist tariffs, which will only harm the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, we the people. Again, you will never hear this type of analysis be forwarded by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, because it does not tie into their frothing of the mouth, Fabian Socialist propagandistic agenda. These people are wed to a particular ideology and to a particular goal, and they will not take themselves away from it for anything. Because if they do, that means showing weakness and the potential that they will lose the cause that they have been working towards so diligently, so relentlessly, so tirelessly for the past century and a half. But in the case of Senator Jeff Sessions, it shows a deeper problem, and that can be counted as one of the few blessings that this bizarre ascendancy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian. He doesn't really believe in the principles that he claimed to stand up for so long. He is willing to sell them out at the drop of a hat, just to get what? Some sort of notoriety out of all of this? Does that really serve the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty? This is deplorable. It's despicable, and it really has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. Jeff Sessions should be ashamed of himself, but I've come to the conclusion that Jeff Sessions has no sense of shame whatsoever, or else he would have never bound himself with the Orange Terror from New York. Why is it that we find such betrayal within the rank and file of the gutless opposition party? It's because they have had a taste of power, and they do not wish to release that power, even though they know that such power rightfully belongs to we the people. They are disregarding the tenets of federalism, which is an inherent and intrinsic part of our representative Republican form of government by the very design that's contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution. And this is why people like Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who is a fascist on wheels, and his friend Senator Munchkin are sitting there saying that due process is killing us. They are literally going out and saying that the safeguards, the firewalls that are contained within that sacred document that is the greatest social contract or compact ever devised by the hands of men yet divinely inspired by providence above is killing us. They want to stand against it. They've always wanted to stand against it, but they feel that they are so close to achieving some sort of societal or social victory, some social justice warrior campaign thing here, that they see the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, folks, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, swear to you, as I speak into this microphone, that we will never bow down, we will never surrender, we will never capitulate, we will never give in to these charlatans, these hucksters, these snake oil salesmen and con artists, because our fundamental and inalienable rights are too important, they're too dear, they're too sacrosanct to allow these nefarious forces of tyranny, despotism, and above all oppression to have their way. And Senator Sessions, your deeds, words, and actions have condemned you to be included in those ranks. You have betrayed the conservative movement. Now, I know that this may not be popular, and it certainly isn't politically correct, but I don't care. We have got to get past these Fabian Socialist tools that are being utilized against us in a campaign to silence us, in a campaign to attack us, in a campaign to divide and conquer the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, we the people. And unless and until we start to come to terms with this, we are never going to be able to overcome these attacks. Again, this is why we stress that it is so important for us all to foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights. We have to be empowered with the ability to stand up to these nefarious hucksters and say, no, you will not encroach upon my fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms. No, you will not fundamentally redefine my country or fundamentally transform it. No, you will not be able to just amass power for yourself and have no accountability to the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. We have to get back to a representative Republican form of government, and the only way that we can do that is returning to strict adherence to the United States Constitution at all levels of government. That's something that we have oftentimes reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and it's just as true now, if not even more so. We see that these forces are doing everything in their power to tear this country apart at the seams. Do we even know what the inevitable consequences of that will be? Of course we do. We know that it will be an increased loss of freedom. We know that it will be an attempt to further sow the seeds of balkanization in the body politique of the United States of America. They have shown their cards. And because they do these things, they are among the most predictable people on the face of God's green earth. You see, this is why we warn you. But we also provide you with practicable, real-world solutions, and those are found within the Constitution. This is why the constitutional compositionist movement that can exert influence on all of these politicians is so important. It is time that we start lobbying for the Constitution. Nobody is looking out for the best interests of the American people. Well, it is high past time that that changes once and forevermore. And I say this because it is our rights and our sovereignty that matters here. There's another important lesson to take away from all of this. No one can take away our rights unless we allow them to. This is why we must band together in solidarity and unity to tell these nefarious forces no, that we will not allow them to trample upon our sacred, fundamental, and inalienable God-given rights. We have to protect our rights. Recall that after the Constitutional Convention, a young lady walked up to Benjamin Franklin and asked the senior statesman, "What have you given us, Mr. Franklin?" And he turned to her and said, "We have given you a republic, if you can keep it." Notice that part if. I have to place emphasis on the term if you can keep it. That means that our duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility in our capacity as popular sovereigns is to defend the Constitution, is to defend our fundamental and inalienable rights, to ensure that we hand them down to the next generation so that they can exercise and enjoy them with the full light of freedom as we have, if not even greater than we did. That is the true calling that each and every one of us has as popular sovereigns. These duties, these obligations, they belong to we the people. They are ours, and they belong to no one else. This is something that Jeff Sessions doesn't understand. This is something that the mafioso quafioso fails to understand as well. Our rights belong to us. They are non-delegable. They are non-negotiable. But we see clearly from the positions that the mafioso quafioso has taken in the aftermath of that dastardly shooting at the Pulse Gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, that he does not care about that. That he does not even consider that to be a realistic thing. It's not even on the radar for his hairpiece. Well, his bad hairdo is bad enough. Do we really want that to be the representation of the United States? Do we want to continue to sacrifice our rights for a fleeting sense of security? Remember that Benjamin Franklin also said that those who sacrifice their essential liberties for a fleeting sense of security deserve neither liberty nor security, and shall certainly have neither. This is where we are now. This is the predicament that we face in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And of course, it's our duty and obligation to call it out. It is our duty and obligation, as well as responsibility, to ensure that they are incapable and unable of taking away our rights. Because if you give them an inch, they will take the whole damn thing. That is the repeated pattern that has shown up time and time again with these nefarious Fabian Socialist forces who are hell-bent on destroying this once thriving community of ours. But can we overcome it? I think we can. But it is going to take a great deal of effort on our part. And the great deal of effort of which I speak is that we begin to be hawk-like in our vigilance for protecting our fundamental and unalienable God-given rights. There is no other way to do this, folks. Other than the Donald Trump incident and the fact that Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama has decided to sell out on his constitutional principles, we see that the narrative is still being controlled by the frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialists. We see, again, that the head of the Department of Justice, Attorney General Loretta Lynch, hit the talk shows on CNN to try and discuss what's going on in the investigations in the aftermath of that dastardly shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. And they are once again trying to tap dance around the issue of Islamofascism. They're trying to equate it to hate, and she even went so far as to say that the LGBT, STFU, WTF, LMAO community has been targeted by such hate too frequently. This goes along with Homeland Security Director Jay Johnson, in saying that the Islamofascist terrorists are no different than so-called right-wing fundamentalists. Of course, they have no justification for this. This is just idle speculation on their part and an attempt to continue to sow the seeds of balkanization in the societal fabric and framework of the United States. It's a dastardly thing that we see them do, and of course it has no basis in reality. Again, it's all trying to pull out this idea of going to knee-jerk emotionalism, raw emotionalism, to get people to emote rather than to use their logical and mental faculties so that they can be more easily manipulated. And the way that they're trying to manipulate the people here is to make them equate conservative Americans, those of us who wish to strictly adhere to the fundamental tenets contained in the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Folks, there really is no way to candy coat this or sugarcoat this or sweep it under the rug. This is the frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialist agenda, and it's all designed to promote that cancerous doctrine of moral relativism. Just as we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have declared war on the cancerous doctrine of political correctness, we have also declared war on its twin, its identical twin, that of moral relativism. These venomous ideologies, tactics, and strategies are all being utilized to weaken the true heritage, character, spirit, and national identity of the American people. Now, I'm sure that many of you are puzzled, scratching your heads, wondering why they are engaged in this sort of malicious conduct. Well, the reason for it is that they are attempting to strip power away from the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. That has been their goal and their modus operandi for the past century and a half. This is why my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, and I have been warning you about this so many times on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It bears repeating, because what they're trying to do is to claim that we are the same sorts of adherents to barbarous and barbaric practices like those of the Islamofascist state. Yet, at the same time, they refuse to properly identify the enemy. This is again tying into that dark and twisted game of semantics that the Fabian Socialists always engage in. It's not about our well-being. It's not about our safety or security. Think about how the director of the FBI has come out and said that they don't want those who are on the no-fly or the terrorist watch list to be prohibited from purchasing firearms because that will be an alert sign to them. It'll raise red flags for them and they'll go underground and the FBI will lose any and all ability to be able to track and follow them. You see, that's the thing. If they were really about security, they would be embracing the fundamental tenets that are contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Again, as always, the Constitution is the key for the vast majority of the problems that currently face this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. But they loathe and despise the Constitution. They have to go down the same avenue and line of thinking that Mao Zedong went with in Communist China. Remember the euphemistically named Cultural Revolution that occurred in China. That was all about erasing their past, about erasing the memories of everything that had existed in that ancient empire before the rise of the Red Communists. He knew that if they had maintained that, or if they had left those traditions and values in place, it would provide a pedestal upon which those who were resisting the communist movement would be able to assert a claim of dominance. And that is intolerable for any type of Marxian ideology. And believe it or not, when we look at the Fabian Socialists, they do adopt, adhere, and acquiesce to a form of Marxism. This inability to properly identify the true enemies that are hell-bent on holistically and totally annihilating the United States of America, both as a nation and a people, is a part of cultural Marxism. It is a part of trying to bow at the altar of the state and promoting the cancerous doctrine of moral relativism. They're trying to say that there's no right or wrong, and that the Islamo-fascists cannot be named as wrong because that's the only religion they give protection to. You notice they're willing to attack Christians at any available and given opportunity, and they have willing participants and willing helpers in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. Because, again, those adherents to this Fabian Socialist doctrine that infest our information media outlets and sources are adhering to a twisted and maniacal Fabian Socialist agenda. And their agenda to them matters more than anything else. It matters more than the sanctity of our supreme law of the land. It matters more than the health, safety, and well-being of the American people, and that's why they push for it. Another example of this is look how the so-called Affordable Care Act, or as it's known in the common vernacular, Obamacare, was not actually about health care. It's all about power. But as the old adage goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what we're facing. We're seeing that this once open and honest government, which is supported by the longest running, uninterrupted constitutional document in all of world history, is under attack. They hate it. They want to corrupt it, and they have been corrupting it. That's why we see corruption, rank corruption, running rampant in this once thriving community of popular sovereigns. And it's not an easy thing to admit. It's not an easy thing to address because it really will take a great exerted effort on the part of we the people in our capacity as popular sovereigns to address and overcome these problems. And because of the overzealous regulations and the regulatory schemes that have been forced upon us by these diabolical Fabian Socialists, they have ensured that it is all but impossible for we, the people, to come together in any meaningful fashion, to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity to stop them. Why? Because we are so busy attempting to carve out a niche for ourselves, attempting to ensure that we maintain our caliber of life, our quality of life, and our livelihoods. And that's what they're banking on. In fact, remember that the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs in his magnus opus Keynes at Harvard had warned about this 60-plus years ago. He warned of the dangers of the Fabian Socialists infiltrating our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border. And that was 60 years ago. We see that the problems have not gotten any better. In fact, they have been exacerbated by the passage of time. The sands of time do not wait for the people. But because the natural law tenets that underpin this entire representative Republican form of government of ours, and indeed our shared United States Constitution, it's absolutely critical that we recall that it's based on natural law tenets, and that the natural law by its nature is timeless, that these principles that were pinned down in our Constitution some 235 years ago are just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as, God willing, they will be 235 years from now. Again, this is the path we must walk. This is the reality that we must accept if we are ever going to restore the United States of America to the path to prosperity. That's our duty, our obligation, and above all, our responsibility, and that responsibility belongs to no one else. But with respect to what the Attorney General was trying to say, I'm actually going to play a soundbite here for you folks so that you can hear it from her own words, because I don't want you taking what I'm saying here at face value. This is all about empowering you. So here we're going to watch her try and say that it was an act of hate, not of Islamo-fascist terrorism. So they're trying to approach this as a hate crimes thing. Here we go.
Gay Americans?
You know, he didn't get into that, and so we're still exploring why he chose this particular place to attack. We're asking people who have information to come forward. People have. We greatly appreciate that. We are trying to learn everything we can about this individual's motivations. As you note, he was in a gay nightclub. This was an act of terror and an act of hate targeted against a community, the LGBT community, the Latino community, and of course the LGBT community is so far too often the victim of these types of crimes.
Let's talk.
There you have it, folks. There is the moral relativism. There's where they're trying to tie it in with hate. You notice she did say it was an act of terror, but what sort of terror? Terror and Islamo-fascist terror are separate things. Terror is always there, but Islamo-fascist terrorism takes it to an industrial level. They are the ones that make it like a military machine, and they use that to sow the seeds of fear and destruction within the hearts, souls, and minds of their targeted community. And we have to come to terms here with the fact that they are targeting the entire Western way of life, our Western philosophy, and they want to replace it with this twisted, barbaric, medieval ideology that deserves to be reserved for the rubbish bin of history. And the fact that the Fabian Socialist Democrats and this disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime refuses to call the enemy who the enemy is, it is a major distraction. And we know that Obama has come out before and said that words matter, but with respect to this, he's trying to say to the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media that it doesn't matter what you call the problem, that's not going to make it go away. Maybe not, but it will make it to where it's easier to focus upon the real threat. It's easier to stamp out that threat which is there and is unavoidable and cannot be ignored. But then we see that Loretta Lynch adds that little caustic part to the end of her statement there, where she said that the LGBTQLMAOSTFU WTFO and WTF community just is there to be abused, that they are too often the targets of this. Now, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have said that no one deserves to have their fundamental and inalienable right to life snuffed out just for their lifestyle, and that just because one disagrees with their lifestyle, and that does not mean that we hate them. But that's the narrative that the frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialists are going to double down on. Why? Because it fits in with their propagandistic agenda to incrementally and fundamentally, and depending on your point of view, irreparably harm and destroy and transform this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. We cannot ignore this. But we in the conservative movement have a major problem, because the presumptive nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP, is a man who doesn't acquiesce to our beliefs, who doesn't follow our line of beliefs. In fact, he's even gone so far as to say that it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party, and that he didn't need the whole party to be united behind him. Why is it that we find ourselves in this untenable situation? This was our election cycle to win, and we blew it. We blew it by turning to a so-called messianic figure who only had his self-interest at heart. He has only been operating for the things he cares about, and that's what it comes down to. And in a time of danger like this, it is wholly insulting that even Donald J. Trump would go along with the no-fly, no-buy, or we cry bill in an attempt to infringe upon our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, instead of actually pushing on the other part of his statement that Islamofascism is a major part of it. And that's the thing. He is not truly conservative, and he doesn't mean that he's going to go forth with the ban on, Islamic immigration into the United States. He's already said that everything he said on the campaign trail thus far are mere suggestions, and that they are not binding, and that he will not have to adhere to them once he assumes the highest office in the land. Folks, that is the path to totalitarianism. That is the path to awakening fascism in the body politique of the United States of America. Last I checked, our grandparents' generation, or in some of our cases, our parents' generation or great-grandparents' generation, went to war, risked their lives to fight this sort of twisted ideology. Is this really the type of America that we want to hand down to the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born? I don't think so. Because what we were tasked to do in our capacity as popular sovereigns was to hand down this great inheritance, this great birthright that was handed to us by our founding fathers, and that is the Constitution. Because the Constitution secures and safeguards our fundamental and inalienable rights. But because it is a symbiotic relationship, it requires that we, the people, also proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable rights as well. Otherwise, we stand to lose everything. As my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, has oft-times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, if we lose our rights, we lose everything. Because then the government has the capacity and the authority to say what we can do, how we can live, and whether we live or die. And don't think that they would not jump at this opportunity. The death panels with the so-called Affordable Care Act, that's all part of it. It's all about control. But who gave the government the right to control us? Who gave the government the authority to determine what's best for us and what's in our best interests? No one did. And in fact, that's diametrically opposed to the true natural heritage, character, spirit, and above all, identity of the American people. You see, this is why they engage in these nefarious little schemes of identity politics. It's all about using the tried and true, albeit threadbare, tactic and strategy of divide and conquer. They see this as the perfect opportunity to weaken the resolve of the true wielders of absolute authority and sovereignty in this country, we the people. That's been their goal all along. That's what they for all this time. It's not for us. It's for them. It's always been about them. And Donald J. Trump falls into this same pattern of conduct, this same course of behavior. And it's troubling. And it should be troubling. We cannot afford to allow this to go unchecked, to be unfettered, because what they are doing to each and every one of us is attempting to strip and deprive us of all that matters. That cannot work in an open and honest society like the United States of America. It has never worked in an open and honest society like the United States. And folks, if we let this go, there is no place to escape to. That was one thing that Ronald Reagan said that really stuck in my mind. That if we lose the fight for liberty here, there is nowhere to flee. There is no other place. We are the last best hope and bastion for liberty and freedom on God's green earth. I know, it's a difficult concept, a scary, frightening concept to keep in mind, but this is where we are. This is what we have to face. And we see that with all of the frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialists, that they try and say that those who are trying to link this to Islamo-fascist terrorism have no idea what's really going on and that we're just speaking with absolute malice and hate in our hearts. Really? And you know, I love that the president has gone before the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and attempted to say that we don't fully understand what this terrorist motives were. That's funny. I thought he made a phone call to 911 and said that he was swearing allegiance to Abu al-Baghdadi and the Islamo-fascist state of ISIS. Could it be any more clear? Could he have made it any more clear than he did right then and there? You see, this is the intellectually disingenuous path that the Fabian Socialists always walk, and it is always dangerous, it is always detrimental, and it is always against our best interests, both as a nation and a people. And that's by design, folks. They are doubling down on these efforts to attack us, to go after us, to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, and for what purpose? The purpose of power. That's all that matters to them. And I know it seems as though I am just repeating myself, but that's literally what they do. They get into this circular position, this circular reasoning, and they just grind down on it and grind down on it, and they apply our constitutional liberties and freedoms, our privileges and immunities to it, to grind it down and to wear it down until it is pounded into dust, so that we are left with nothing, as my first officer Jeremy Grapington has so often said. And he's right to say it. He's right to say it because that is what's happening before our very eyes. That is the illness, the disease that currently afflicts this once thriving, flourishing, and vibrant community of popular sovereigns and representative republic of ours. And the sooner that we awaken to this reality, and the sooner that we start to address these problems, the better off we'll be able to be, because then we can more easily rebut them, and we can begin the arduous journey and task of undoing all of their twisted schemes and goals that they have worked towards relentlessly now for the past 150 years. Have you noticed that in the history of the United States, since the cessation of hostilities in the American Civil War, we have seen the federal government exponentially expand its scope and breadth of power to go against the true, clear, and concise terms contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution? It's not mere coincidence, folks. This is by design. This is the goal that they have for each and every one of us. It is all about stripping us and depriving us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. And these nefarious forces see a light at the end of the tunnel. They think that they have come this close to achieving complete success in their twisted goals and agendas. Therefore, we as popular sovereigns now more than ever must come together in a sense of solidarity and unity, standing shoulder to shoulder to send a resounding, unquestionable message to those who wield the reins of political power, that we are not going to bow down to their attempts to attack us, that we're not merely going to roll over and play dead as they trample upon our sacred Constitution, that we are the beneficiaries of the greatest constitution that has ever been devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above, and that we are not going to merely allow that to fade into the annals of history. This is why it is so important that we continue to foster this fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights. Because no one else is going to stand up for our rights. And we have got to stop looking for messianic figures. Look at the disaster that Donald J. Trump is turning out to be. And folks, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been warning about this for quite some time now. We have been trying to tell you that he was not who he claimed to be, and he continues to show that that's not who he is. This is why he adopts the same unconstitutional agenda of people like West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin and his Connecticut buddy there in Chris Murphy. They literally sat there and said that the due process clause is killing us. And I know that I mentioned this in the previous segment, but it is just amazing that they are so confident and that they are so arrogant as they can claim with a straight face that our rights are killing us. No, our rights are not killing us. The cancerous, twisted doctrines and ideologies, those twin doctrines there of political correctness and moral relativism are what is killing us. But they don't want to admit that because, again, that would tear down their twisted Fabian Socialist agenda and propagandistic goals. And that's why, of course, you'll never hear this type of analysis ever on the mainstream media or from the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. Again, they would not acquiesce to this. And here's the interesting thing with respect to that little interview with Loretta Lynch on CNN. There were no questions asked about the immigration of Muslims as it relates to Islamic terrorism, particularly given that Omar Mateen's Muslim parents immigrated from Afghanistan. No, again, that would attack Obama's crazy idea of flooding the United States with so-called Islamic refugees. Yet who do we really ignore? We ignore the Christians that are being beheaded. We ignore those innocent people who refuse to bow down to the iron yoke of the Islamo-fascist state. No, that's ignored. Our dearly beloved leader there, the President Peel and Squeal and Chiquita-in-Chief himself refused to even call that an act of genocide. Oh, but he said words don't matter now. But before that, he said words do matter. You see, that's the thing with the Fabian Socialists, and this is why Donald Trump is a Fabian Socialist. They are consistently inconsistent, except that they are predictable in their pattern of behavior. It reminds me of the old adage that actions speak louder than words. Well, here we see that Trump's actions, and the actions of Barack Hussein Obama, and the actions of Attorney General Loretta Lynch are all speaking loudly, saying that they do not care about the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people, that they only care about power, and that they only care about their twisted agenda. It's just that Trump has been able to be the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. He's been able to dupe them with his snake oil. But what good is that doing us? Is that bringing us any closer to restoring this country? He's the wrecking ball. Yes, we know that that's what his campaign likes to refer to itself as. But does that really serve the best interests of the American people? When we need to restore something, do you go and tear down something that is mostly still good and then rebuild it? Not if you value that which was there, not if you value what this country stands for and represents, not if you care about the true hopes, dreams, aspirations, and future of the American people. But it's quite open and obvious, clear from their code of conduct, and from the way that they've been behaving, and from the messages they've been conveying, that they don't care about the American people. So, we have to rely on ourselves, Our founding fathers would have expected us to rely upon ourselves. Our founding fathers would have expected us to have said something already. Because what we see here are the seeds of tyranny being planted within our own sacred homeland. Why are we allowing this to happen? You see, with respect to what Trump's doing here, how can he be a nationalist when he tramples upon the only thing that defines us as a people and a nation? When he admitted, by his own words, back in 2012, that he never read the Constitution from cover to cover because he saw no value in it. No value in it? If that's the case, I see no qualification for him to be in the highest office in the land. And yet so many, like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and Michael Weiner Savage and Laura Ingraham, Matt Drudge, Little Orphan Annie Yep Yep Toto the Floozy, they've sold out. They don't care. They attack our Constitution. Well, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, will never do that. We will never abandon our principles. We will never stand in stark opposition to those things that matter to each and every one of us, because it is our duty and obligation, as well as responsibility, to stand up for the fundamental and inalienable right of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people, and we are dedicated to that mission. As we have stated before, the Fabian Socialists and the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the Salivating Mainstream Media are working hand in hand and in tandem to create this false narrative. And we've also stated that it doesn't matter what lengths they are willing to go to. They are willing to go and break the law. And it's interesting to note that there is a gun shop that said that the CBS News organization attempted to violate federal law, and not just attempted, actually violated federal law to attack the fundamental and inalienable rights of we the people. And this comes off of a group called Chicks on the Right. And the title of the article by Hannah Blue, who goes by the nom de plume of Red Dawn. I love it. Absolutely love it. It's Gun Shop claims CBS violated federal law to make it look easy to purchase an AR-15. Now, see, we've already pointed to the fact that the shooter, Omar Mateen, did not actually carry an AR-15. He was carrying a carbine made by Sig Sauer, the Sig Sauer MCX. But again, the media narrative is not about reality. It's about conjuring up all of these fictitious specters to make people stop using their mental faculties and to just rawly emote so that they are more easily manipulated into surrendering their fundamental and inalienable rights. And it's interesting to note that what they were trying to do here is to create this obsessive message that left-wing journalists are whining, even more than usual, to see just how easy it is for law-abiding citizens to procure a firearm. Again, that goes to the heart of their narrative. It goes to the heart of their message, which is to strip and deprive the true, decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of exercising their fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms. And what is the reason for this? Well, the reason is they loathe and despise the ability of the American people to think and act for themselves. They hate our constitutional liberties, freedoms, privileges, and immunities. We've said this on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and it goes to show that they are attempting to do it again. Well, the problem is that the CBS News station tried to engage in an experiment here to see just how easy it was, and a reporter basically lost his mind, or her mind, rather, when she was able to purchase an AR-15 after passing the federal background check. And then the reporter got a temporary case of PTSD after shooting an AR-15. Remember, this is the one that was whining and complaining and saying that the .223 round was so heavy, so loud, and so destructive that it hurt her poor little mind. Well, she was the one that conducted the experiment to see how easy it is to purchase a firearm and transfer it to a third party. Now that's funny. There's one problem with all of this. The gun store believes she violated federal law. And this same gun store told CBS News's, the same news outlet, the same graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media that was peddling this drivel, Paula Reed, that the gun, the Spec Drive Tactical, has even filed a report with Virginia State Police. They believe the purchase was unlawful. Now why? Why would they do that? Well, it's because, as Reed told the manager, the rifle was for her own use. Reed being the whiny reporter. So we see here, she lied. Of course, that's not difficult for the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They adhere to a Fabian Socialist doctrine. They lie all the time. Their entire modus operandi, their entire philosophy is based on a lie. So it's not a stretch of the imagination that this reporter, who is a wimp by any other name, would go out and lie. And she then revealed in the story that she purchased the firearm not for personal use, but to prove a point for her story. That it's just so easy to transfer guns to a third party. But the federal background check Form 4473 specifically states in its questions, are you the actual transferee or buyer of the firearm or firearms listed in this form? Warning. You are not, if you are not the actual buyer, or you are not the actual buyer if you are acquiring the firearm or firearms on behalf of another person. If you are not the actual buyer, the dealer cannot transfer the firearm or firearms to you. Notice, right there, her own little scheme has put her in violation of federal law. This must come to an end. This sort of twisted machination, this sort of rogue agenda that is only out there to spread fear and destructive emotionalism is not going to do anything other than push for this Fabian Socialist agenda. Of course, that's what the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media exactly want. But she violated federal law. Now, is Loretta Lynch going to call this an act of hate? Is Loretta Lynch going to see that this is a thinly veiled attempt to strike at the heart of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights? Or is she going to ignore this? Is she going to say that this is journalistic exploration? Well, need I remind Loretta Lynch that the Ninth Amendment states that our rights are not to be interpreted in such a way as to disparage or belittle the rights of the American citizens. In other words, one right cannot be utilized as a tool to bludgeon the other rights contained within the Bill of Rights or the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. And so, what would they fall on here? Free speech? Or the freedom of the press? But you see, that would be falling upon free speech or freedom of the press to attack the other fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. That, in itself, would be violative of the supreme law of the land. So we see here that they are going to double down on selective enforcement of the law, that they are going to preach a narrative that has no basis in fact, and they are going to get away with it, except that we have called this to your attention. And the chicks on the right have also called this to your attention. We have to bring this to your attention because it shows just to what great lengths and extent that these Fabian socialists will go to lie, to obfuscate the truth, all for the overarching goal of stripping and depriving each and every one of us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. It's sickening, it's evil, and it's downright un-American, yet here we are. It's what we face, it's what we see. It unfurls before our very eyes on a daily basis. And it's amazing that Reed's misdirection here led the Spec Drive Tactical Store to believe that the transaction may have been what is known in legal parlance as a straw purchase. And that is a federal crime. Here's what the statement of the gun store, Spec Drive Tactical, said. Miss Paula Reed came into the shop with cash, claiming she wished to purchase an AR-15 to undergo training. Ryan Lamp, Spec Drive's general manager, told the Washington Free Beacon she refused basic free instruction of firearm safety under the pretense that she was using the firearm for training with an NRA-certified instructor. Again, another lie. Due to the information provided in the CBS News report filed today, I suspect Ms. Reed committed a straw purchase and procurement of a firearm under false pretenses. Now, again, folks, is this a huge stretch of the imagination to conjure up the thought that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media would engage in this sort of duplicity? Not at all, not in the least. This is what they do. They love to do that. You know, you just go ringy-dingy on the bell, and there they are, salivating with their pre-prepared narrative that has no basis in fact or reality, that is all about stripping and depriving the popular sovereigns of their sacred rights. And for what purpose? Power. Greed and power. That's what these Fabian socialists are all about. It's what they have always been about. It has been about perverting the pillars of our society to push us ever closer to their Fabian socialist dystopia. Well, it should be rejected outright, as it has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. And again, folks, we bring this to your attention because it is vital that we first know where the problem is and who is orchestrating the problem, and that we also develop a practicable, real-world solution for this. I believe that this Paula creature, this Paula Reed, should be prosecuted, and that she should face the same type of trial under due process of the law that any citizen should. You see, I'm actually giving them more of an opportunity to be protected than the presumptive nominee for the guntless opposition party. I am actually staying true to the Constitution, unlike Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions. You see, that is what it requires. Equal protection under the law applies here as well. But these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists do not give a damn about our fundamental and inalienable rights, and they will push their narrative come hell or high water, irrespective of the deleterious and detrimental impact that it might have on the body politique of this great country of ours. Why? Again, hatred, power, corruption, greed. It's as Alexis Tocqueville warned, that great French philosopher who showed a love for early America, when he said that any flavor, form, or facet of socialism was merely a New Age form of feudalism. It's a medieval ideology, a caste system in which we, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, are relegated to the status of serf, where the government can tell us what we can and cannot do, when we can live, how we can live, and whether we live or not. I don't remember the government ever having that sort of power. I don't remember that ever being a fundamental tenet of our representative Republican form of government, because truth be told, it is not. It is diametrically opposed to all that we hold near and dear in this country. And unless and until we begin to address this in totality, then these problems are only going to accelerate. We are only going to see our nation be exposed to even more, even greater threats, like those that have been foisted upon us by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. It's disgusting that these types of reporters would viciously go out and attempt to attack the rights of their fellow citizens. That's a deprivation of liberty. That, too, is a federal crime. It's a conspiracy to deprive us of our liberty, and the United States Code does speak to that. And it's something that comes from the civil rights legislation, oddly enough. In fact, there are two specific code sections that speak to this. First is 18 U.S. Code Section 241, which is conspiracy against rights, which we can see that the CBS News organization, along with their reporter, Paula Reed, are trying to engage in a criminal conspiracy to encroach upon the rights of the ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. And the next one, 18 U.S. Code Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. She's trying to say that the crime of murder has been allowed to go forth, and the crime of terrorism has been allowed to go forth because of our having rights, and therefore she is attempting to deprive the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty of their fundamental and inalienable rights. It's a felony. She has committed 2 felonies, folks, and no, I'm not going to back down from this, and I know it's not politically correct for me to say it, but it is the God's honest truth. We need to get back to a modicum of sanity in this republic. We need to stand up for our rights because no one else is going to do it. And these charlatans that would go to such great lengths to deprive us of our rights need to be held accountable. I'm sick and tired of them trying to strip and deprive decent, law-abiding citizens of their means of defense. Why is it that they blame us over the Islamo-fascists, to whom Omar Mateen had, without a doubt, sworn allegiance to? That's what he did in that 911 call, while he was still in the Pulse gay nightclub there in Orlando, Florida. Why is the media not covering that? Why are they not covering the ISIS angle? Again, because it goes against their Fabian Socialist, twisted, propagandistic agenda that they cannot divorce themselves from. They don't care about facts or reality, and they damn sure don't care about the health, safety, and well-being of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. It's about expanding the control of the federal government, incrementally forcing socialism down our throats, irrespective of whether we want it or not. But socialism, because it goes against the clear and concise language contained within the 4 corners of our shared United States Constitution, is violative of the supreme law of the land. Because pursuant to the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2, the Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land. Again, this is stuff that they ignore. It's stuff that they don't want to believe. It's stuff that they don't want to touch. And it's funny. It's funny because the chicks on the right approached the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and Malarkey, the BATFEM, and the ATF claimed that they're aware of the controversy, but refused to say whether they were looking into the matter or not. Why? Again, is this another example of them violating the rights of the American people? Of course it is. It shows that they are adhering to a political narrative which is not what they're supposed to do. But then again, the ATF is a federal bureau that is not provided for within the 4 corners of the United States Constitution. And if we go back to the actual design of our federalist system of government, as our founding fathers had intended for it to operate, we would see that the federal government is one of limited powers. It must trace its authority to govern back to a power that is specifically enumerated to it in the clear and concise constitutional language. Ah, but we're not there. It's not there. You will find it in Article Non, Section Existent, Clause 0, because, truth be told, it is nowhere to be found in our shared Constitution. This is again just another attempt to attack our rights, and we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are sick and tired of these charlatans, these hucksters, these con artists, these snake oil salesmen from going forth and trying to deprive us of our God-given rights and liberties. Who in the hell is Paula Reed to think that she has the right to try and trounce upon our God-given rights? She's no one. She does not have that power. She does not have that authority, just as this government does not have that sort of power and authority to wield and exercise over us. They are acting in a duplicitous manner, and I am sick and tired of it. If you ever needed proof that there is this coalition of unconstitutionalism, I believe that the stories that we've covered on today's Solo Flight Special Edition go straight to the heart of the matter. There is no denying that this is what they're doing. There can be no denying that they are attempting to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. And here's the amazing thing. Do you think any of their proposals that they've made are going to do anything to stop these crimes from occurring? Do you think that it's going to end terrorism and make America safe and allow us to come together as a nation and a people hand in hand to sing Kumbaya frickin' Ya? No, it won't. And in fact, according to the Politistic, the Dems admit that more gun laws won't stop terrorism, yet we should do it anyway. And this is kind of surprising that ABC News' Jonathan Karl exposed the absurdity of these Democrats who are obsessed with passing new laws for the purpose of justifying their existence, to make it look as though they want to do something, when nothing could be further from the truth, as they work relentlessly, tirelessly, incessantly towards depriving us of our constitutional rights. We see that Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, the same one who brought these bills in the first place, the same one who stood up on the Senate chamber and filibustered the rights of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear firearms, claims that he fully realizes that his twisted agenda has no hope of curbing gun violence, but that we need more gun laws anyway. Stop. Just stop, Chris. Do you realize that you took and swore an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution? Why are you not being held accountable for that? Why is there not an immediate investigation right now as I speak into this microphone to have criminal charges brought against you for deprivation of liberty, for conspiracy to deprive liberty? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to trounce upon our fundamental and unalienable rights. Enough is enough. This madness has to come to an end. You are one of the ones there, little Murphster, who can't go out on a limb and say that this was Islamo-fascist terrorism, because that would be politically incorrect. That would go against your twisted Fabian Socialist agenda and might hurt some people's feelings. Grow up and get the hell out of our country. We're sick and tired of this. What you are doing is colluding to essentially push American citizens into a class of servitude, so that we have to live on bended knee, accepting every twisted goal and agenda that the federal government says is in our best interest. Well, you can go to hell, Chris Murphy. No one gave you the right to do that, and just because you're a senator does not mean that you have the power, the authority, or the wherewithal to strip and deprive the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty of their God-given rights, liberties, privileges, and immunities. But here we see. He is, according to the Washington Free Beacon, they said, you are specifically pushing a bill, and have been pushing a bill, and it will be voted on Monday, this coming Monday, folks, tomorrow, folks, to close the so-called gun show loophole, would that have done anything to stop the massacre in Orlando? Jonathan Karl asked Murphy on ABC's This Week. Karl, of course, was referring to an amendment that would require background checks on all sales at gun shows and online. Murphy initially stuttered before responding, so it may have in the sense that if your partner together with the bill that stops terrorists from getting guns. But Karl didn't let it go at that. But wait a minute. He didn't buy those guns at a gun show, and he would have passed the background. He did pass a background check, Karl interjected. All of a sudden, this little frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialist was put on the defensive. He then said he did pass a background check, but if the Senator Dianne Feinstein bill, the one that Donald Trump supported, was in effect, the FBI could have put him on the list of those who are prohibited from getting guns, Murphy said. And what if he went into the gun store and was denied? He could have just gone online or to a gun show and bought another one. You see, Senator Dianne Frankenstein, Democrat of California, has been pushing an amendment that would prevent anyone on terror watch lists from buying guns. Now, of course, as we have argued, many innocent people are mistakenly put on these lists, and law-abiding citizens have their Second Amendment rights taken away without due process. So it's violative of the supreme law of the land, our shared United States Constitution. But does that matter to these charlatans? No, of course not. Then, what went on is, what I'm trying to get at is that every time there's one of these terrible tragedies, there's these proposals, Karl said. Your proposal would have done nothing in the case of Orlando. It would have done nothing to stop the killing in San Bernardino, and was unrelated to the killing in Newtown. So, why are we focusing on things that have nothing to do with the massacre that we are allegedly responding to? Kudos to Karl there for standing up to him and saying this. And then we see that Murphy tries to say, I disagree. I think the proposal had been put into effect. It may have stopped this shooting, Murphy said. But we can't get into the trap in which we are forced to defend the proposal simply because it doesn't stop the last tragedy. We should be making our gun laws less full of Swiss cheese holes. This has to be broader than just responding to the tragedy that happened 3 days ago. In other words, it's about stripping and depriving the popular sovereigns of their fundamental and inalienable rights. Yeah, we've got it. We understand where you're coming from, Murphy. You know, your problem there, little Murphy, is that you don't care about the Constitution. You want to put, to use your own words, Swiss holes in the firewall of our shared Constitution. Well, you can go straight to hell, because that's not going to work, and we are not going to allow it. We will continue to stand by the supreme law of the land. We, here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are going to continue to stand up for and defend strict adherence to our shared United States Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. You know, Senator, you should be investigated for trying to violate the fundamental and inalienable rights of the popular sovereigns, because what you're doing there is despicable. It goes against everything that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And of course, you don't care about that. You never have. The sooner that we, as popular sovereigns, come together in solidarity and unity, to reject these attempts to strip and deprive us all of our fundamental and inalienable rights, the better off we'll be, because we will better be able to point out the charlatans like this Murphy character and tell them to go to hell. And that's exactly where they need to go, because they are trying to punish you for the deeds of Islamofascists, for the deeds of the so-called religion of peace that they refuse to call out because it would be politically incorrect. This is how upside down things have gone in this once thriving country of ours. This is the intellectually disingenuous nature of what they're doing. And I'm sick and tired of it. Just as I am sure each and every one of you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, are sick and tired of seeing our rights be trampled upon like this. But the Fabian Socialists are not going to give up. It's not in their nature to give up. They are going to double down on their efforts to strip and deprive us of our rights because they think that they are within reaching distance of achieving the goals they have been working for incessantly for the past 150 years. And it's got to come to an end. And we will be the ones that stop them, because it is our duty and obligation, as well as responsibility, as popular sovereigns, to proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable rights. No one else will be able to do this, folks. And I know that I've repeated that a fair number of times on today's Solo Flight Special Edition, but that's because it's so important. Because we see that they are doubling down on these efforts, that they are refusing to relent, and they need to be held accountable for their violations of our law. But you're not going to get it under this administration. You're certainly not going to get it from a Donald J. Trump administration. He's siding with them. He is going along with them. That's why he needs to be held accountable too. It is high past time that we in this country begin holding these people accountable, because it is our responsibility to do so. And that is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, come forth and speak into our microphones and go before the friendly airwaves to provide and convey this information to you. It's to empower you. It's to empower you to protect yourselves from these twisted machinations, from these diabolical forces that are hell-bent on depriving you of your fundamental and inalienable rights. We will never back down from that because it is far too important. This nation and the people and our rights are all far too important just to hand over to these people on a knee-jerk reaction of political correctness and moral relativism. And with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. I promise you she will not be duplicitous and she will not engage in Fabian Socialism. She's just there to pour you a glass of alcohol. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. I also invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here on our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX, and there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, our Blogspot page that has audio blogs, and our Cafe Press account, which has all sorts of trinkets and goodies with our logo and first-class passenger logo at decent prices. This includes laptop covers, tote bags, drinking glasses, hats, shirts, neckties, you name it, it's there. Take a look, folks. I'm sure you're bound to find something that meets your fancy. Again, thank you for flying with us. We'll see you again next time. Do take care.